that was my fault. I think I hit stop broadcast instead of reshare. So that is my fault. My bad. So I'm gonna wait awkwardly for you all to matriculate in here. Hold on a second. Let's see, we are here now. So we're just gonna post the link into the comments. Go here. Go to this one. Wow, that's a little embarrassing on my part. It's like my first day with technology. My fault. Let me just send a remind back out to people. We are still live on another broadcast. Go to my YouTube page. Hopefully some of you have found your way here. I'm not surprised if you haven't. Oh, we're still up to 10. Thank you to those 10, now 11 people that are staying with me. I'm sorry I'm such a failure. Yeah, it is what it is. Sorry. Now up to 14. I promise we'll stay on a little bit longer due to my idiot move that was, but we'll let you guys matriculate in and we'll get on through there. Once again, my fault. Please keep asking questions, people. Surprised not a lot of my own students have asked, but I'm really happy for the ones that have. I'm proud of you. You guys are good on my good side. The rest of you, totally dead to me. Just totally dead. All right. Besides that epic fail that I just had, let's continue with this tutoring session. Has it really been 45 minutes? I feel like we've had so much fun. I feel like classes never, in 45 minutes, are much more boring than this. We're having a lot of fun, or at least I am. So let's have some fun doing this. All right. I got so many subscribers tonight. This is awesome. This is great. I feel like this is just great. All right, let's take a look. Monroe Doctrine, American System. Ooh, all right, I haven't talked about this one, so let's talk about it now. American System, Henry Clay. Him and James Madison kind of come up with this idea that we're going to make America great. That's why Donald Trump wants to make America great again. So he's going to have an American system, right? All right, so American system, 3 things. TTB, tariffs. They are going to tax the nonsense out of foreign products. If it's not made in America, it is going to get taxed. Number 2, transportation. We're talking canals, roadways, and railroads, which we haven't really talked about the railroad yet because, I mean, they're very primitive in the 1820s, but they are going to be massive. And in fact, when we get to the next unit, I know I'm going to talk about railroads more because they are single-handedly one of the most important inventions, not in terms of U.S. history, in terms of transportation or economy, but the Civil War. The Civil War is single-handedly lost because of the railroads and the ability to ship goods and people so fast. Canals too, being from upstate New York, the Erie Canal. I kind of took it for granted as a kid because I'd always like go to the Erie Canal and like, that's no big deal. It's just a canal they can't swim in or drink from. But the canal goes from Buffalo all the way to Albany, and it has a really cool song, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. I recommend y'all listen to that. That song is awesome, and it is like nostalgic. So I'm getting kind of like all the feels right now, like thinking about it. I might have to play it for my class tomorrow. So if you're not in my class, just ask your teacher to play the song. And then we get to B, we get the National Bank. And we've already talked about the National Bank. The National Bank was brought in so that it could stabilize the economy. We have a national currency. All states are on the same dollar and coin system. It's good. People can invest in the bank. Obviously, the wealthy are going to invest in the bank. The poor aren't really going to invest. But especially two of those three things are going to be the things that kind of make people upset: the bank and tariffs. And people, we're talking the South. Like the North, they like both of those things. The South, not so much. They're not really going to like it. And that's what's going to turn the nation sort of against itself. The American system is sort of the start of sectionalism, because what it happens is the North is pro-tariff and pro-bank, and the South is anti-tariff and anti-bank. And that's really going to start that drive between people stopping to, be nationalist and people really starting to be more sectionalist. Okay, so good question about the American system. Let's keep going through. Miss Cox is watching. You're welcome. I'm glad that we were able. I'm glad you're able to watch this a little bit. Hopefully, I didn't say anything that you didn't teach about in class or taught it wrong. War of 1812. Really don't have to talk about that, considering the fact that we've already done that. That was last unit, but it's like that second war for independence. I'm not really going to get into it. Actually, check my last video. We covered that. Okay, I saw something about the Rush-Bagot Treaty. Rush-Bagot Treaty is the division between the Great Lakes and the United States and Canada. So like we're New York, that lovely state of Ohio, Michigan, there's all those Great Lakes. Basically, we kind of just make a division between US, Canada. Niagara Falls, for instance. You could throw a Frisbee from Niagara Falls, America to Niagara Falls, Canada. And the river, the St. Lawrence, that kind of breaks it up that's the, not the St. Lawrence, that's not what I meant. The lake, Niagara Falls, that separates the two countries, that was determined by the Rush-Bagot Treaty. So the Rush-Bagot Treaty separates Canada and the United States. At the time, it was owned by Great Britain. Nationalism and sectionalism. It's a good question. So in terms of nationalism, we're saying pride in our country. People are addressing themselves as Americans. Where are you from? I'm an American. Sectionalism, you identify with your region, which we still kind of see today. People tend to be more, I am from the South, or I am from the North, or I'm from New York, or I'm from North Carolina. They don't generally say I'm from America. They tend to be more sectionalist. And at this time, it's dangerous because the sectionalist behavior really creates tension between people. And that's not so bad today. Sort of, I guess it kind of is, but in a way, it's much better than it was back then because they were actually ready to kill each other. And They did. Killed a lot of people. All right. Trump 2016. Okay. How impactful was the American system? It was pretty impactful. I would say that for a lot of things, it did a lot of good and gave us a little bit of economic prosperity while Monroe was the president. He really wasn't a bad president, but yeah, he's never really like in anybody's top 5. But yeah, I would say that the American system was good. It benefited the country, but then when Jackson came in, he kind of just took those all away, minus the tariffs. I mean, transportation, that obviously was helpful. All right. North was good for industrialism because of rivers. Yeah, because of the rivers, they were able to navigate using the rivers. The North is filled with a lot of rivers. The South has their own rivers, but like especially the Mississippi. But the North has just a lot more that is able to connect the cities, and that's where they're able to put most of their major factories are on rivers. You look at England; most of their factories started on rivers as well. Excuse me, I saw a question that I was going to address. I totally gaffed on it. Hold on a second. 3 points of Jackson. Okay, Jackson is crazy, but he's simple. You got to know 3 things. Bank crisis, nullification crisis. The thing we haven't talked about yet is the Indian Removal Act / the Native American crisis. So Jackson issues this Native American Removal Act, Indian Removal Act in 1830. People always say that it was just him trying to kick Native Americans off their land to appease the common people. And in a way it was, because a lot of Southern farmers who were the common people looked to Jackson to say, hey man, look, we really want more land, but like there's people living there. We just want them to go. But a lot of the Native Americans were just like, okay, we wouldn't really mind leaving. But a majority of them were pretty okay with staying where they were. So the 5 civilized tribes, the Seminole, the Creek, the Choctaw, let's try that again. The Seminole, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, and the Cherokee. There we go. Those 5 civilized tribes are all affected by this Indian Removal Act because they're being removed from the southeast of the United States and being sent to Oklahoma, which hadn't really been open to just the Oklahoma territory. And Jackson kicks them off, and what happens is the state of Georgia is trying to get them to go quicker, and the Cherokee are having none of it. In fact, the Cherokee start to sue the state of Georgia, in which known as Worcester or Worcester versus Georgia. And what happens is John Marshall, who in his old age self is still the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, goes, you know what, the Cherokee have treaties that should be abided by, and they have every right to their land. Andrew Jackson goes, cool, you are not the enforcer, I am, and they're going to go. But now while I'm in president, I'm going to make that for Van Buren. And so they actually don't leave until 1837. A lot of them die. 4,500 Cherokee die because they leave. They get forced to march in like November, and it's cold in Oklahoma. Like, no, it's in the South, but the Midwest, the place is cold, it's barren, dry. A lot of people die. It's real sad. Real sad. So, how did the Democratic Republicans change during the election of 1828? Well, they were not really happy about losing to Jackson, that's for sure. The Democrats formed their own party under Jackson. That's where the donkey comes, because people called Andrew Jackson, now pardon my language, a jackass. And so he adopts that as the party symbol. And so the Democrats and the Democratic Republicans under John Quincy Adams, they run against each other. And Andrew Jackson wipes the floor with them because John Quincy Adams, he wasn't, like, once again, not a bad president, but just like his father, people just don't like him. They, you know, I think back to the old political slogan, don't vote for Adams who, it's like vote for Jackson who can fight, not Quincy Adams who can write. If that isn't the greatest representation of America, I have no idea what is. Don't vote for an American president who's smart. Vote for one who can fight. Is that the mentality of America in 2016? I think it is. I think it is. That's a story for another day. All right, let's see what we got here. So, new message show. I still see some questions being asked, so I'm just going to refresh. And nothing on this one. Let's go back to the new one. 3 things proposed by Clay. We talked about that. Really don't need to talk about that. Why did immigration have an impact on industrialization? Great question. That is an awesome question. It goes back to the immigration thing we talked about in my last video. So with immigration, immigrants are coming from Europe to America, especially in the 1850s. They are poor and they are just looking for jobs. What better place to put a poor immigrant who's looking for a job in a disgusting textile factory? They don't care that it's dangerous. They don't care that they could lose limb. They don't care that they're going to work from sunrise to sundown and work 6 days a week. It's a tough life, but the immigrants are totally willing to bust their tail feathers to actually go and do this hard labor. And they live in these disgusting apartment areas in the cities, often very cramped. Like my apartment right now is very spacious. It could probably fit about 8 families no, more than that, probably about 10 families, 10 immigrant families back then, especially in big cities like New York and Boston before they were really taking off in terms of population. That's so, especially the Irish. The Irish are going to be like the big factory workers at first, and then the good old Italians. My ancestors will come in and kind of start working in the factories too, and a lot of those Polish immigrants as well. Germans would go more towards the farms. They really like to get their hands dirty in farming. So I'm glad that people are saying good job and thank you. You're welcome. I'm really happy. Did anybody try to impeach Jackson? No, actually they didn't, and that's pretty funny that they didn't, because the first president to get impeached was Johnson, and we'll find out about that in Reconstruction. Sorry, I'm like starving. It's like 8:30. I haven't eaten anything besides broccoli. They pretty much realized with Jackson, either death was going to kill the guy, or they just have to wait until they were until he was out of office, because nothing was getting him out. I'm actually surprised he didn't try to extend his presidency. Like, I know FDR did. I am just so surprised Jackson did not. He must have been feeling that bullet in his chest from that duel from like 30 years before that. Also, really funny thing about Jackson, his wife, like, she was like married to somebody else when she married him. So he married, I don't want to say harlot because that sounds really bad. I guess adulterer would be the best word. It's Jackson. I mean, there's not enough time to talk about the craziness that was Andrew Jackson. Like, boy. All right. Let's take a look at other questions. Like I said, we've already talked about Henry Clay and the Great Compromises. You have to watch the video that I ended the broadcast on early accidentally. But like I said, Henry Clay, just know he's the Great Compromiser. Missouri Compromise, Tariff Compromiser, and the American system. Banks, tariffs, transportation. Henry Clay. Oh, and the Whig Party. Starts his own party. Loses every presidential election he's in. But you know what? He tries. And you can't criticize the man for trying. All right, let's see. What else do we got here? Spoil system. That is a great question. Okay. Oh, and corrupt bargain. Two things that really define Andrew Jackson's presidency. First of all, he is the biggest sore loser ever. So in the election of 1824, he wins the general election. He wins the general election. He actually wins the electoral college vote, but he doesn't get a majority. He gets like 99, but he needs like 111 votes. So the vote, and I don't even need to tell you this, it goes to the House of Representatives. I know, you knew that. I just had to say it. I'm sorry. I know you knew it was the House that picks the president if there's no majority from the electoral college. Anyways, so the House of Representatives, who basically gets coerced by Henry Clay at it again, and Clay goes, you know what? Look, Jackson, he's a great guy, but let's go to Quincy Adams. Let's vote for Quincy Adams. He seems like the more sensible guy here. So John Quincy Adams becomes president, and what does Henry Clay get in return? He becomes Secretary of State. How lovely for him. So Henry Clay gets Secretary of State from John Quincy Adams, and Jackson's like, oh, what the, are you kidding me? What? And he goes, a corrupt bargain. This is corrupt. I didn't win because of corruption. It's like, no, dude, you probably didn't win due to the fact that you're nuts. But don't worry. You'll just run a smear campaign for 4 years, and then John Quincy Adams will lose, and you'll become president for 8 years. Yay. And so what happens is when he becomes president, he goes, thank you to everybody who has supported me and, got me to where I am today. Hey, you know what? You're going to be an attorney general. You over there, you're going to be a federal judge. You're going to be my Secretary of War. He elects and not elects, but he nominates people to become these job holders that are not qualified. That's like me going to the public forum for Guilford County being like, I'm going to replace Mr. Green as superintendent of Guilford County. It's like, look, Calicchio, we know that you have a master's degree in teaching, but you are severely underqualified to become a superintendent for all of the schools in Guilford County. But if Andrew Jackson was my homeboy, he could have nominated me and made me superintendent under the spoil system. Come on, I thought you were looking out for me, Andrew. God, so selfish. But that's the spoil system. Spoil system is when you give unqualified people jobs. Corrupt bargain, we're talking about how Clay coerces House of Representatives to make Andrew Jackson or John Quincy Adams president. How did Transcendentalism affect society? So we talked about this in the first tutor video. So with this Transcendentalism, I love Transcendentalism. All 5 tenets of Transcendentalism are awesome to me. More so the self-optimism one, because like I love myself, so I'm very into myself. So obviously anything where it's building confidence, transcendental. I'm being transcendental. Try saying that with a straight face. It's pretty tough. Basically, people start to look around them and go, we really should appreciate the things around us more. And with Transcendentalism, we got to think of Emerson, Fuller, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, Walt Whitman, technically Washington Irving, the guy who wrote Sleepy Hollow, he's an early Transcendentalist. And so with Transcendentalism, especially Emerson and Thoreau, because they go and like live in nature, they do this by being in nature. They're able to really just focus on what they think is successful. And especially for Thoreau, man, this guy, he writes, but he also thinks about civil disobedience, and he will refuse to pay taxes for the Mexican-American War, and he's going to get into trouble for that. But his actions of civil disobedience, where he's refusing to obey unjust laws, will inspire Gandhi, will inspire Dr. King, will inspire Nelson Mandela, will inspire all these civil rights activists that are going to take nonviolent approaches. So the Greensboro Four technically were inspired by Thoreau, because Thoreau inspires Martin Luther King. So it's pretty cool to see. It's pretty cool to see that Transcendentalism created the idea of civil disobedience. Commented Susan B. Anthony, Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Last video. Just go back to the last video. I already talked about that. Women's suffrage. What I haven't talked about is the other social reforms. Education reform, prison reform, and temperance movement. Let's talk about those 3. Education. Horace Mann. So the reason why you are watching me right now, because you want to be successful at public education, which was started by, you guessed it, Horace Mann. So Horace Mann thought about this great idea that the government should provide free public education for people, and all students, rich and poor, will have the opportunity to go to school, and everything will be Gucci. Everything will be great, because no one's going to, hate each other because of different socioeconomic statuses. Because that's never been a problem when you put rich and poor people together. They definitely get along swimmingly. Anyways, the idea was great because they wanted to create well-informed, educated voters, and they were going to do so by educating people about democracy, and that hopefully through the democratic system of education, they would become informed voters, and they would want to become lawyers and doctors and scientists and engineers and teachers, and nobody wants to become a teacher. Who was I kidding? And so what happens is that's good, because obviously the public education system is still around today. Hey, got that job. Lucky me. Anyways, then we'll talk about prison reforms. Like the opposite. Prisons were really bad back then. Not like you think prisons are bad now. Prisons on steroids back then. It was pretty bad. We have to talk about Dorothea Dix, and she is really the key instrumental person here. And what happened is with Dorothea Dix, she is like, she just does this like prison tour, and she just sees all of this awful stuff in these prisons. She sees like the mentally insane people who have mental disabilities, who can't control their actions, being locked up like criminals. And it's really bad because she's like, well, their brains are different. Like they can't control what they're doing. They need to be placed somewhere else. And that's where asylums come in. And the asylums are pretty awful places because we think of them. But back then, they're pretty revolutionary. You know, you're putting people who are mentally insane and unable to control their emotions in these places where they can, you know, not being, it's hard to say normal, but more normal than what they were if they were treated as criminals. Now, in terms of the prisons themselves, we're not going for, let's just make it really bad and make the punishments really awful so that people don't want to commit crimes. Let's rehabilitate people. And so we develop these rehabilitation prisons where we teach people, hey, stealing is wrong. Hey, assault is wrong. Hey, murder is wrong. And by rehabilitation, we are trying to make a better society so that when people leave prison, they don't go back to prison. Because when you're incarcerated, you don't want to get re-incarcerated because then it's a bad cycle, okay? And basically back then, everybody looked to the United States and said, wow, look at their awesome prisons. Nowadays, nobody does that because we still haven't reformed our prisons. Since then, they're still pretty bad. Nowadays, we look to other countries and kind of just say, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we had those kind of prisons? Like Norway or Netherlands or Canada. Oh, Canada. You have such nice prisons. Anyways, and then the last thing, temperance movement. Basically, temperance, people need to stop drinking so much alcohol. Okay, I understand that alcohol was the safest thing for them to drink back then. No bacteria can survive in alcohol. And so it's scientifically safer for them to drink. But if you drink a lot of alcohol, your liver goes bye-bye. So that's bad. Okay, so with the fact that they're drinking a lot of alcohol, their livers are deteriorating and they're dying because they don't have a functional liver. So women are like, hey, by the way, when my husband goes to drink a lot at the pub, he comes home. If he comes home, that is, because he might just be lying face down drunk in a ditch somewhere. He might, I don't know, go rob somebody or get into a fight, which gets him in jail. And he might come home and be abusive. Alcohol consumed at a large rate is not healthy. And not only that, but it's the cause of other problems in society. And if you look at Transcendentalism in the Second Great Awakening, religions, especially Protestant religions, really frowned upon drinking a lot. Like especially Baptists, they were very conservative in terms of drinking. Catholics, however, poured down their throats. Wine for everybody. Woo! Germans, Irish, beer, beer, beer. So there's that whole divide right there between Catholics and Protestants. There's this, Protestants are like, don't drink. Catholics are like, hey, party for everyone. They're getting lit like Christmas trees. In a way, social reforms, always fun. Who commented on my video saying you came into Mr. Buck class with this morning, said I was going to do a live stream? I'm doing a live stream right now. I'm literally doing the live stream. This is like literally, what? Now I have to go into the class and embarrass you tomorrow? I don't want to do that. I don't have to though. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You brought this upon yourself. All right, 5 more minutes. Let's go 5 more minutes. Question about the Panic of 1837. Last video. I'm sorry, this video has already been I screwed up. Go back to the last video. I have all the information on there. I promise. I promise. I promise. All right. Anything else? Any other comments? Did pet banks work? No. No, they did not work. No, they single-handedly helped cause one of the worst economic crises in America. Yeah, it was real bad. I'm going to end with slavery. I'm going to end with slavery. I think this is a good place to end. So we talked about the cotton gin. We talked about how Eli Whitney, with his great intentions of ending slavery because, he'd invented a machine that didn't need labor, completely backfires and more slaves come in. So what happens is more slaves come in and they go where? You're right. Very good. I heard you. You said the South. I'm so proud of you. So they go to the South. They go to these plantations. And what happens is they start going and they just start coming in thousands and hundreds of thousands. And they go from like 750,000 to like 4.5 million in the span of like 3 decades, which is a lot. Okay. This is a lot of people. And obviously we're expanding west and we gain Missouri and then Maine goes to be a free state. But the South wants to keep growing in terms of how many slaves. And what's going to happen are slaves are going to start, not every slave has the same life. Some slaves are treated nicer. Some of them are treated much harsher. Some slaves work inside. Some slaves work outside, depending on their skin color. And what happens is some of these slaves get the ability to read. Some get the ability to learn how to write. And some get the idea to learn how to say this is bad. Frederick Douglass taught himself how to read and write. And then he left. He bounced. Age 20, boom, went up. Harriet Tubman, another one. She taught herself and she vacated. 1830, Nat Turner. He taught himself how to read and write and then led a slave rebellion that ended up with 60 people dying, all white, of course, men, women, and children. And when they captured him and they kind of wrote about him, they made him seem like this like really, bad guy because he was trying to kill to gain his freedom, which was kind of that David Walker approach, that idea of you got to fight for your freedom. You have to fight for your right not to party, to be free. Sorry, Beastie Boys. And so what happens is with Nat Turner's rebellion, and what happens is that slave laws become way stricter. People stop letting their slaves read and write. They can't assemble. And abolitionists, thanks to the Transcendental and Second Great Awakening, when abolitionists start to sort of push legislation, like petitions at the federal government to be like, can we really get rid of slavery? This is ridiculous. Like even Britain got rid of their slaves before us. Or like those buck-tooth tea drinking, funny accent talking people, free slaves before us. Are you kidding me? And Congress basically goes, ah, la, 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 I can't hear you, gag rule. And they basically choke the people. And they say, you can't talk to us about slave anymore. And so basically slavery is on the hush-hush for a while. And it's going to take some serious events in American history. The Dred Scott decision, which is probably one of the worst Supreme Court cases besides Plessy versus Ferguson. Bleeding Kansas, where everything goes cray-cray real fast. There's a guy hacking people up with a broadsword. It's like one of my favorite stories. Good old crazy John Brown. Harper's Ferry, also John Brown. And then, of course, the Civil War. That itself is just nuts. But what Nat Turner's rebellion does is that, yes, it does open people's eyes that slavery is bad. But the real effect is that slaves, people aren't trying to free them. People are trying to prevent them from having basic human rights. And this is why people that are abolitionists are like, hello, we're treating them like animals. This is awful. This is just horrible. So, all right. Methinks that is enough for a night. That's an hour and 15 minutes. Going to go enjoy my pork chop in Netflix. It's time to Netflix and pork chop. You thought I was going to say chill, didn't you? Psh. All right. Later, guys. Get some sleep. I'm going to stop the broadcast. Watch this video and the other one. This one and the other one. Deuces.